So, good morning, everyone, and thank you for joining us on this important video where we are looking at one of the most important areas of the LDAN Bill. We all know that LDAN, or the Learning Disability, Autism and Neurodiversity Bill, to give it its long name, makes lots of suggestions for changes. One of the most important, but perhaps one of the most misunderstood, are the plans to collect more and better data about the lives of people with learning disabilities. Joining me today are two absolute experts on data and its use, and they also know loads about the LDAN Bill too. David Jack and Kirsty McFadden are famous from the Fraser of Allendale Institute, which is part of the University of Strathclyde. They are both really interested in data and how it can help improve things. I've got a load of questions for them, which have come from comments from Enable groups, and I hope we can learn something today. So first of all, I'm going to ask David and Kirsty to introduce themselves. First, David.
Okay, hello Kirsty, good morning, and thanks for the opportunity to talk to you today about the LDAN Bill consultation and what it says regarding the very important topic of data. So my name's David Jack. I'm a Knowledge Exchange Fellow and a statistician at the Fraser of Allendale Institute. And funded by the charity Acorns to Trees, we're on our second programme of work looking at the lives of people with learning disabilities in Scotland. And for this second programme, we've been focusing on data improvement and also employment. So where our previous work highlighted barriers and inequalities, this programme, which started at the beginning of 2023, and that's when I got involved on secondment to the University of Strathclyde. So yeah, this has been focused on finding solutions and evidence to enable change, to enable positive change. And I've been leading on the data part of the programme. Hand over to Kirsty.
Thanks, David. Hi, Kirsty. Nice. Thanks for having us on this call. It's really nice to be here. So yeah, as David said, we've been working on kind of two key work streams when it comes to the lives of people with learning disabilities. So David's been working more on the data side, and I've been working more on the employment side. So trying to increase employment for people with learning disabilities in Scotland. So I'm really interested in the data side of stuff as well, because we don't really have that good of an understanding of how many people are in employment with learning disabilities in Scotland. So the LDAN Bill could be really useful for this. So yeah, we're really excited to be here and to chat more about
it. So now it's time for the first question. I'd like you both to answer this question. What does the LDAN Bill say about data gathering, and why is that important?
Okay, I'll start. So first and foremost, there is acknowledgement from the Scottish Government within the LDAN Bill consultation that current data limitations can restrict evidence-based policy making and planning. So, in other words, if you don't have good data, you don't have good evidence, then you're not going to achieve good policy. The consultation says that it's important that the population of neurodivergent people and people with learning disabilities are visible in topic-specific collections of data. And there are many examples at the moment where this just isn't the case. Importantly, many of the thoughts of the lived experience advisory panel for the bill chime with points that we've previously made, especially around improving the consistency and timeliness of data collections, including consideration of how we collect data from GPs. And also that people with learning disabilities should have the opportunity to understand and contribute to the decisions around data collection and reporting. So we've said many times that this is an area where policy and practice and the provision of services are at risk of being crudely informed by data which is available but not fit for purpose. And the data section, the data theme of the LDAN consultation sets out 4 proposals which could help with this. The first proposal states that if a commission or commissioner is created, their functions could include responsibilities for collecting and analysing data on neurodivergent people and people with learning disabilities. And additionally, it goes on to say that a body could actually have powers to make recommendations to other organisations around the collection of this data. We then have 2 proposals which seem to be related. Proposal 2 talks about placing duties on relevant public bodies to collect data on neurodivergent people and people with learning disabilities, where it would be helpful to better understand the needs of these groups, to better understand their experiences, to inform service design and improvement, and also to allow the evaluation of outcome measures. And then the third proposal indicates that these public bodies would then return this data to the Scottish Government. So enhancing the evidence base through the collection of more relevant data is only really going to be truly worthwhile if there's investment in the resource and the capacity available to robustly collate and analyse information. So if we collect more data, we need more people with the right skills to be able to do this effectively. And we need more analysts and more researchers to help understand what it's telling us. And that's the way we inform policy and campaigning as well. The fourth and final proposal in the data theme of the bill consultation is to consider the development of a Scottish version of the Learning Disability Mortality Review. And I believe that's actually now known as the Learning from Lives and Deaths programme, or LEDR programme. Now, this was established following a pilot that was undertaken to learn from the lives and deaths of people with a learning disability across England, aiming to improve care, reduce health inequalities, and prevent avoidable deaths for people with learning disabilities and autistic people. So that's some of the things that the bill consultation says. I'll hand over to Kirsty to see if I've missed anything and to kind of fill in any gaps.
Yeah, so I think David gave a really good overview there of what the LDAN Bill says, and I guess kind of to emphasise his point of why it's important, I'd say that we really need good data as a kind of starting point for the bill in order to be able to track that it's doing what it's supposed to do. So the goal of the LDAN Bill is to uphold the rights, like the human rights of people with learning disabilities and people with neurodivergence. And if we don't know where we're starting from, then that's really difficult to track. And so we don't know if that policy is doing what it's supposed to do. So yeah, what we kind of found when we were looking at the data stuff, as David said, was that there's some really good ideas in there, but we need to think about like how these are going to be funded and resourced so that things will be done really well and really effectively, so that we can get the information and the evidence that we need in order to make sure that the bill is actually making the positive difference that it says it's going to.
Right, question number 2. What data is the most important?
I can start on that one. So for me, it's data that tracks outcomes of people with learning disabilities. So when we talk about outcomes, it's like things like health and employment and education and housing. So what we're looking at is like, are things across people's lives improving as a whole? So that's super important for me. David, I don't know if you want to come in on that.
Yeah, so I mean, we need to ensure neurodivergent people and people with learning disabilities are no longer invisible in Scotland's public discourse. And I'd probably pick out 3 important areas on the data, but there are many more. I mean, there's actually some really basic stuff that we just aren't clear on. So, for example, it would be good to have a better understanding of the number of people with learning disabilities in Scotland. We've previously recommended that the Scottish Government should recognise that current data is not fit for purpose. They should examine approaches to build on existing data to enable understanding of the requirements of people with learning disabilities throughout their life course. I think it was our first programme of work that highlighted that when we consider the learning disability population in Scotland, there are a number of incomplete data sets, and none of them really provide the data that policymakers need to develop policy effectively. I think the second area, and Kirsty touched on this, around employment, there's data available on pan-disabled employment rates in Scotland, but there's a lack of detailed data, and there's an absence of reliable and routine labour market information about people with a learning disability in Scotland. For individuals with learning disabilities, accessing meaningful employment opportunities can be both a challenge and a significant milestone towards achieving inclusion and leading a fulfilling life. I mean, at the Fraser Islander, I think we've previously identified there's evidence of what works when the right support is given to someone with a learning disability who's seeking employment, but replicating success at scale can be a challenge. And at present, there's an absence of robust and relevant labour market data for people with learning disabilities in Scotland, and therefore the ability to understand and track progress is really, really limited. And the third area I would pick out, and it's actually an area where we do have important data, and that's on people who draw on social care services or draw on social care support that funded partially or completely by local authorities. Now, this data is published by Public Health Scotland, and we can actually drill down to the learning disability client group, which is really, really great to be able to do that. However, whilst this covers met need, it's important to note that there's thought to be considerable unmet need in the social care system. And therefore, this is another area where we need better data, we need more data to be able to understand the extent of this, especially as we would envisage that the new Scottish National Care Service will need projections of the number of people who may draw on adult social care in Scotland in order to plan and operate effectively. And the evidence for people with learning disabilities is a crucial part of the picture that just can't be overlooked. So I think that's what I would add to Kirsty's response.
Good answers. Question number 3. Why are there gaps in data being collected, and what is disaggregation?
Okay, so I think that's a really good question. Why the gaps exist, and to be honest, it's probably a combination of things. I think there's problems still arise surrounding unclear definitions. There's challenges with data collection methods. So there's known issues, for example, with underreporting and self-reported surveys. There's missing individuals within data collections. There's resource constraints. And then you'll always have the trade-offs between cost, frequency, and data richness when it comes to collecting data. And it's this final point, data richness, which relates to your question about disaggregation. So disaggregation is really another way of saying the level of detail which the data is collected or it's reported. So we have to remember that not everyone with a learning disability will identify as such. Surveys might not be designed in a way that are accessible to someone with a learning disability. Some people might not want to disclose their disability, and there might be confusion as to how we define disabilities, learning disabilities. If neurodivergent people and people with learning disabilities can't take part in surveys or share their insights due to data collection being inaccessible, then we can't collect the data that we need. I think throughout our work at the Fraser Islander Institute, we've highlighted instances from several data sources where due to the way the data is being classified, we haven't been able to distinguish the evidence which directly relates to people with learning disabilities. I think the most frequent concern would be data relating to people with learning disabilities and people with learning difficulties being grouped or aggregated together. There are important differences here, and the terms should not be used interchangeably. The consultation itself for the bill proposes that a body, as I said before, could have powers to make recommendations to other organisations collecting data to disaggregate their data to the level of neurodivergent people and people with learning disabilities. And there's some examples where this would be really, really helpful. And going back to something I talked about earlier, which was labour market data. So at the moment, this is collected by the Office for National Statistics, and they have an annual population survey, which is deemed the official source for labour market indicators by region and by small groups of the population. However, learning disabilities are included in the health problem, severe and specific learning difficulty category. So there's no way of currently being able to distinguish between people with learning difficulties and learning disabilities within that data. And there's other examples. So Scottish Household Survey, it actually uses a category which says learning or behavioural problems, and then in brackets, example, autism, Down syndrome. Again, this is far from ideal categorisation, as it fails to provide insights specifically on individuals with a learning disability, which is our focus in the Institute, and as well as being inconsistent with other sources such as Scotland's population census. So I think a real important point is, the title of this bill brings together learning disabilities, autism, and neurodivergence. And regardless of the reasons for this, and we won't get into that today, we feel that it's necessary to stress that improvements around data collection must be founded on gathering more evidence at the individual condition or disability level. So back to that point you made about disaggregation. And if I could just kind of add to that, there are probably ways of bridging some of the gaps by doing more with existing data collections. So, for example, we could tighten up definitions, we could ensure a much higher level of consistency across data collections, and this would make it much easier to connect data together and to draw out insights which would inform good policy making. And this also includes thinking about questions relating to long-term health conditions that are asked through surveys, with one option possibly being to consistently follow the disability and long-term health condition question from Scotland Census 2022. There are challenges undoubtedly around sample sizes, and we need to consider whether samples can be further boosted so that data collected can be representative and offer insight required on neurodivergent people and people with learning disabilities. And alternatively, we need to think about whether new approaches which go beyond mainstream surveys should be considered, particularly when it comes to inclusiveness. And we're actually doing some work in this space at the moment. So a couple of final points. So we've previously recommended that undertaking of more routine data linkage of established existing data relating to the lives and experiences of people with learning disabilities. And I think the bill should hopefully help prioritise this activity, ensure that such outputs can be made available on a regular basis. And then on resources, and probably come back to resources again at some point during this discussion, but I think it's important that we work smarter, and that's particularly relevant. At present, the analytical support for this area of policy within government in Scotland appears to be far too limited. And the proposals in the bill consultation will need to be backed with a plan to enhance this resource. So to be effective, improved data collection would require better guidance to be produced, collection methods to be carefully considered, and then you need to think about quality assurance as well and how processes can be developed. So that will require more people with the right skills to be able to do this. Yeah, Kirsty, I don't get into add on that one.
I think just going back to when we were thinking about outcomes, and like the whole goal of the bill is to like make things better for people with learning disabilities, autism and neurodivergence in Scotland, right? So That kind of highlights for me why we need to have separate data on each group and not aggregate them together, is because what we've seen with the goal of closing the disability employment gap in Scotland, which is when it's basically the difference between the number of people that are not disabled that are employed versus the number of people that are disabled that are employed. There's like a big gap and it's kind of closing slowly. But what we've seen when we analysed that is that different disabilities were getting jobs faster than others. So like it was like musculoskeletal conditions, like people that have those, their disability employment gap is closing quite quickly. But for people with learning disabilities, it hasn't really moved much. So for me, it's super important that we have this disaggregated data so that we have information on people with learning disabilities, people with autism, and people with neurodivergence separately, so that we can see if the bill is working for everyone. Because we understand that sometimes you do need to group things in policies to make sure that everybody is covered, but we also need to make sure in that case that everybody's needs are being met as well. So yeah, that's why it's important for me.
Good. Sorry. Good answers. Question number 4. Our groups have campaigned about people with learning disabilities having worse health outcomes than mainstream. Is there anything in the LDAN Bill that might help identify why?
Yeah, so David talked a bit about the LDAN proposal. So that's the thing that looks at the lives and deaths of people with learning disabilities and autism in England. So that's a proposal that could potentially be useful for looking at health outcomes. But what we've kind of been thinking about more is that the annual health checks that are being introduced for people with learning disabilities in Scotland. So everybody in Scotland with a learning disability should have been offered one of these by the 31st of March this year. And what has happened in England with that policy is that they basically created a register of people with learning disabilities that are known to GPs. It's like a confidential register. So that they can then use that data to kind of understand better what's happening in terms of health for people with learning disabilities. So we kind of are of the mind that if we focus more on the annual health checks, this could be like a really useful piece of data in order to kind of look at health before we get to that point of like unavoidable deaths. Because with LDAN, it's more focused on, there's an investigation created once somebody dies, and then they have a look at what could have been different. With the health checks, because they're every single year, hopefully that means we can prevent anything like that happening, and we can kind of make health better for everybody with learning disabilities. Yeah, David, do you want to add it?
Yeah. No, I think you covered it there, really, Kirsty. I mean, we know from the update and the bill consultation that the Scottish Government has funded the Scottish Learning Disability Observatory, SLDO, sometimes they're known as, to undertake research with Scottish Primary Care Information Resource, which is SPIRE, and Public Health Scotland. And just because I'm going through acronyms, PHS, you're often heard as. Yeah, to use the data collected through the kind of annual health checks to help identify how many people with learning disabilities are registered with GPs. I think that'll be a really interesting and important piece of work. I think, as Kirsty said, you know, with the kind of LDAN proposal, the bill consultation doesn't really give us an insight into how much resource that would require. And therefore, with the annual health checks, if we invest the right resources into the kind of data generation and kind of understanding what that data from those health checks can tell us, to be really thoughtful about what it can't tell us as well, then that might get us to a place which would inform what a Scottish version of the LDAN programme might look like, you know, what shape it might take, how it could be resourced, how it could be managed, etc. So yeah, I think yeah, the health checks really important. and yeah, we kind of look to see, you know, what data becomes available. There's some quite nice resources that NHS Digital produced for England based on the kind of health check data down south. So we might have similar opportunities to look at that data very shortly.
Thank you. Question 5, is there anything else you'd like to tell us today?
I can start on that. I mean, as well as this video, we've recently released another kind of short video resource which covers some of the implications of the proposals set out in the overarching data theme of the LDAN Bill consultation. We've also started producing regular blogs, which are kind of horizon scanning efforts, which kind of look at data and statistics and research, news relating to people with learning disabilities, mainly looking at Scotland sources, but sometimes going beyond where there's relevance and importance to do so. So that's a good way to kind of keep up to date with, you know, what data is out there, and we'll always kind of say, you know, what we make of that data, what it's telling us, trying to simplify some of the messages in there. We'll obviously acknowledge where improvement work is being undertaken, and at the same time we'll also highlight where we think, you know, there should be kind of further endeavours to do more. I mean, the Scottish Government themselves have produced, as I'm sure you know, a short guide and easy reads for each section of the bill consultation. The Scottish Commission for People with Learning Disabilities, SCLD, have produced videos and briefings on their priority areas of the bill, and it's been great to hear about so many events taking place during the consultation period, whether that's been online or face-to-face. So we really hope today's been helpful. There's still time to submit the consultation response ahead of the 21st of April closing date. The bill consultation document is very large. I think it's 190 pages. And, you know, I think, as you said at the start, Kirsty, we know that data can sometimes be a tricky or a daunting, complicated subject for many, but it is really important, and hence why it's an overarching theme for this bill, and that's something we welcome. I mean, hopefully today's conversation can help people feel better equipped, have more confidence to be able to respond to this particular section of the consultation. And of course, the more people that respond, the more views and evidence that's gathered, and the better informed the bill will be. And that's really, really important. And as part of the consultation process, it's important to think about what can add the most value and when. The data-related proposals could make a positive difference in improving the data landscape for neurodivergent people and people with learning disabilities in Scotland. But I think we're unsure whether this would be achieved through all 4 proposals set out in the consultation being applied simultaneously. But something we are certain of, and I always said I would return to resource. So yeah, something we're certain of is that any proposals which are agreed on data need to come with a genuine commitment to be supported by improved levels of resource, along with more opportunities to bring expertise together to ensure data improvement work can thrive, as opposed to being perhaps hindered by being done in silos. And that's something which has happened in the past. So I'll leave it there. Kirsty, I don't know if you've got any final thoughts just to finish off.
Yeah, well, thanks for having us, first of all. But yeah, also, I think in terms of final thoughts, what is key for me is that the consultation has said that data is like an overarching theme for the LDAN bill. And I think that a key point there is that it needs to be truly overarching. Like, we need to think about data in every other area of the consultation. One of the things that it ties into a lot for me is inclusive communications. So that's another kind of key theme of the bill, is making sure that people with learning disabilities are able to take part. And even in this bill, we've seen, like, Enable, for example, are providing some great resources and are offering help for people who want a bit of assistance in filling out the consultation. So you should definitely reach out to them if you're interested. But yeah, SCLD have created more resources. We're trying to create resources. On its own, I don't know how easy it is for people with learning disabilities to, like, take part in this consultation. It's, as David said, it's huge, almost 200-page document. We do have some easy reads and things, but it's a lot of information to get your head around. So what I would say is just try to answer as much as you can, because anything that you add to the consultation as a person with lived experience of learning disability or autism or neurodivergence is really useful. So yeah, the more voices we have in it, the better. Yeah, that's me.
Well, that's all we have time for. I'd really like to thank David and Kirsty from the Fraser of Allendale for their excellent answers and for being so generous with their time. If you have any questions, queries, just email Enable. We can collect the questions. Until next time, goodbye.